dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen. Globalization has become the buzzword, and scholars as well as administrators, including economists, both speak for and against the very concept of globalization. Arjun Appadurai as well as Mr. Bhagavati, two great economists of this century, while speaking about globalization, spoke globalization in 4 or 5 different directions. When they spoke globalizations in 5 different directions, they pointed out globalization generally is classified as ethnoscopic. When I speak of ethnoscopic, it is nothing but movement of people, movement of travelers, movement of immigrants, movement of tourists. And this naturally, if you take the world statistics, make a lot of income for the people as well as for the states. It generates employment. It provides food and succor to many. It increases national income. That is why it is called as ethnoscopic. Now the second category happened to be finance-scopic. When I speak of finance-scopic, in the present day world, lots of investment is being made throughout the world. Now think of the foreigners who are investing money in stock markets. Think of the Indians who are investing money in NASDAQ. Think of the foreign people who are investing money in stock broking or the Bombay Stock Exchange. Or simultaneously or similarly, such money is being invested throughout the world. Now this is the second category of globalization. Now the third one that is being spoken is ideascopic. Now spread of ideas today have become very common. Ideas are not limited or restricted to a particular place. It spreads far and wide. As and when it is written, as and when it is spoken, you know how it comes to. Now the fourth one that is being spoken is mediascope. Now when I mediascope, it naturally means now you have the media to highlight as well as to show what is happening. And you get to know the pictures. You get to know the speeches that are being made, which was just not possible, remember, 10 years ago. Even in villages, through channels, you will be in a position to see these things. So medias play a very powerful role. Now this has influenced the economy. You have, remember, come to know the changes that is taking place in the society. Now the last one that is being spoken is technoscope. Now when I speak about technoscopic, that is the word that is being used by the scholar, he points out, now technology. Technology is not limited to one state today. The flow of technology, the flow of information, the flow of ideas, the flow of money, and the flow of the people has become common. That is where these scholars go to the extent of pointing out globalization takes place in 3 ways. The first one is cultural globalization, technological globalization, then information globalization. Now because of this, what kind of effects are being caused to the economies is the discussion which I am just going to put forward before you. Now when we speak about the impact that is being now faced by the society or the hardship that is being faced by the society, several things are being spoken. Now in between 1960s and 1990s, globalization has been classified, or it is being said by a great American administrator who pointed out that national policies are linked with international economic institutions. Now, when I speak of national policies are linked with international institutions, simply means, remember, you think of the money which you take from International Monetary Fund. Think of the assistance which you take from International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Think of the money or assistance which a state takes from Asian Development Bank or NABARD. Now, national policies of a particular state is linked to the international economic institutions. Now, in what way this has caused harm to the society? Now, when we speak about this, the harm is enormous. Now, it has come by way of structural adjustment program. Now, you know, structural adjustment program is the conditions and the conditionalities are put when you take loan. And one of the conditions that is being put in any program is to liberalize the economy. You liberalize the trade. Now, free flow of market. Allow the multinational to come in. Allow them to establish. and thereafterwards you dance according to the tune set by these multinational corporations. Now this is one definition that is given by a scholar. Now another definition that is being spoken is linking of national economies with the international economies. Now what do you mean by linking of national economies with international economies? Now national economies, remember, are not in a position to sustain. In order to sustain themselves, they have to go out of the way. And naturally, they have to go and become global. And here, it is not concerned exclusively with economic institutions. The definition just goes thus far. So that is a kind of globalization that is being harped upon by scholars. Now, the third set of scholars, when they speak about globalization, they go to the extent of pointing out globalization is nothing but the transfer of power. See the definition, so nicely it is being put by a scholar. It is the transfer of power by national states to multinational corporations. That's it. Transfer of power by states, national states transferring their power to multinational corporations. That is where the death has come. In what way the death has come will be the next discussion which we are going to take. Now when we take up this matter, just think of international labor standards. If you think of international labor standards, just look to the preamble to the International Labor Organization. Now preamble to the labor organization, International Labor Organization, which came to be established in 1919, points out, now achieving maximum or full employment is one of the goals. If achieving maximum or full employment is the goals, what did the report of the International Labour Office say in 1995? If you look to the report which was released by the Secretary General or the Director General of the International Labour Organization in 1995, it goes to prove that 1/3 of the world's workforce who are capable of doing work either are underemployed or are unemployed. And in 1998, again they gave a report, they went to the extent of saying the situation has not improved. That means what? Because of the structural adjustment, because of globalization, remember, naturally what is being hit and hit hard is the 4 international labor conventions. So the first convention happened to be the convention number 1998. The second one is 87. The third one is 100. And the fourth one is 111. Which are these conventions? Well, the first one is freedom of association. The second one is the collective right to collective bargaining. Now the fourth one is freedom, remember, to work. That is ultimately ruined. The fifth one, equal pay for equal work. These are the 4 conventions which are numbered and which is being given in the books which are being printed in the ILO, and the states have become parties. And these conventions are a first casualty today. Now look at the state of India. Before speaking about India, I shall just give you an instance of the state of Korea. Now because of the structural adjustment program in the state of Korea, before it signed a treaty with the World Bank, there are only 7% of foreign investors in the state of Korea. And in 1995, 1 year afterwards, it became, remember, 28. Another year, in 1996, it became 56%. In 1998, it became 100%. Now you think of the state of India now. In India, if you look to the policies that are being revealed or released by the government of India, especially by the Ministry of Commerce, you come to know what kind of policy is it. Earlier, they used to say it is 49%. Now the 49% of foreign capital is increased to 51. Now 51 was raised to 78, and today 78 has become 100 in few sectors. Now what is it that is left us for us? This is the question which you have to make. Now when we speak of it, see, 1/3 of the world's poor workforce who are capable of working are underemployed or unemployed. Now in situations like this, remember, contract employment came to be established. Now contract employment is of what type? In contract employment, you don't have unionism. You cannot speak of freedom of established associations. The convention is useless. It cannot be enforced anywhere. That is the net result that is being spoken. Now, in some other cases, what had happened was, especially in the state of South Korea, now when the structural adjustment program, remember, went in full vigor, the South Koreans shifted certain industries to Bangladesh.
For example, the textile industry, the leather industry. They shifted this industry because, remember, they thought that if these industries are continued, remember, they will not be able to pay much. One. The second industry, the second reason was, this is because it creates pollution, especially the leather industry and the textile industry. They didn't want the state of Korea to be polluted, especially South Korea. With the result, they transferred it to Bangladesh, and in Bangladesh, plenty of women workers were there to be employed. And whether they had unions, what kind of unions they have, could they speak? What about these 4 conventions I have just mentioned? Neither they could enforce, remember, nor they could speak about it. Now you think of India itself. When you take of India, if I just give you the statistics of yesterday, it was Kamal Nath, the Minister for Commerce of the State of India, made a declaration. And he said 30 crores of the people of this country whose income per day is less than $1. He said 40 rupees. If you have seen the newspaper, you will be able to come to know. 40 rupees plus less. It is not plus, it is minus. 30 crores of people we have today. And most of these people who are working under 40 rupees plus less or minus less, whatever, remember, are not unionized. And when we speak of it, when we speak of unions, only 8% of the population, 8% of the workers of this country are unionized. And what about the remaining 92%? The remaining 92% of the workers in this country have no unions, of which, of the 90%, 60% of them are women. That is why we are speaking of empowerment of women. Where are their rights? How it is enforced? This is the strategic, or a tale of tragedy in regard to workers. Now you think of right to development. Now we speak about the right to development. Right to development is a fundamental right. And right to development has been spoken in almost all conventions. Think of the convention. Think of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948. Now somebody was telling Universal Declaration is only a declaration. But it is not so. I pity with those people who speak that Universal Declaration is only a declaration, it is not binding. Now if Universal Declaration is only a declaration, why 43 nations soon after the adoption of the Universal Declaration, remember, adopted the principles contained in the Universal Declaration in their constitution? Why 75 times after the adoption of the Universal Declaration in 1948, the Universal Declaration has been quoted in international resolutions and conventions? People fail to understand this. That means what? It has created a jus cogens. It is a norm of international law from which no derogation is permitted. And in such a situation, what is happening to Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? It is Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights which points out that everyone is entitled to have a life, should have a facility for both what? Bread, butter, food, shelter and clothing. And right to medicine, right to health, right to livelihood, right to age-old pension, right to unemployment. And these resolutions are being again repeated in Article 11 of the Convention on International Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. Whether now it is being spoken so nicely, so lucidly and in such a nice manner. Whether Article 11, to which most of us are parties, most of the states are parties, and they have ratified after 11 years, are respecting these rights. Why this situation? Why the situation is like this? Now when we speak about right to development, you think of the kind of what we call as indigenous products that are being taken from this country to developed countries. And you take instances like neem. Now I don't know whether you know this, neem is registered for purpose of patent in several forms in the state of the United States. And no country, remember, nobody had the guts to oppose this. And remember, when a particular company by name Rock Foundation wanted to register it again as a patent or an origin from the state of the United States, 200 NGOs all over the world protested and they said, it is not your product. It is not new. And what is required in patent, the 3 ingredients, what we call as novelty. What is the novelty? Ancient people were using it as a medicine for wound healing. And what is it that, and what for, or what purpose, or for what purpose you are using it? In what way it is different? This is how it is being argued, and the patentability was rejected by the patent board. Now these are instances, these are situations that is being spoken when we speak about the right to life. Now you think of the right to life, think of the right to medicine. Now when we speak about the right to medicine, I am just encroaching upon the jurisdiction of international patent law. You have plenty of cases that are being discussed. I shall just give you 2 or 3 instances, perhaps that would be enough for the day. Now in one case what had happened was, you might be knowing the state of Thailand is a tourist destination. And when it is known a tourist spot, naturally there will be AIDS, which will come without the aid of anyone. Now in a situation of this kind, what had happened was, remember, most of the patients who were inflicted with the AIDS were using American drugs. American drugs were very expensive, and the state of Thailand used a generic drug. And a generic drug, remember, it was valued and it would cost only 1/100th of the American drug. And immediately when it was introduced to the Thai market, the American multinationals threatened the government of Thailand. And when they threatened the government of Thailand, the state of Thailand did not bother. So at that time, these drug barons, especially pharmaceutical companies, approached immediately the American government. The American government intervenes, and it says, you are exporting 25% of your gross national products to us. You want to export further? 25% of the gross national export to the state of Thailand would go to the state of United States. You want to export it further? Immediately the order was withdrawn. And ultimately the people who suffered from drugs, AIDS, naturally went to heaven with a free passport. Did not come to this world. This is what has taken place in one instance. Now second instance happened to be an instance which I just, for the convenience of this audience, would say. Now in Guatemala, every year, remember, 15 million people. How many? 1 crore plus, 1.5 crores of people, especially children, who die. And remember, they would die because of using alternative breast milk substitutes. If you go to read the World Health Program regarding the World Health milk substitutes, remember, no advertisement is allowed. Advertisement is barred. Otherwise, if Cyrilac and all companies would come with big advertisements. That is banned. Now, an American company gave a beautiful advertisement, and it said, as and when you swallow this powder, the child will go by 1 kg at a stretch one time. Now, this kind of advertisement were carried away by the people, and remember, parents naturally administered this to their children, and they went to heaven after diarrhea. Now immediately the government of Guatemala passed a legislation. All breast milk substitutes from now on are banned. And they should give, remember, what it contains. And it should be publicly shown. And the American powder was withdrawn from the market. Immediately when it was withdrawn, the state of the United States brought pressure on the state of Guatemala. And when it brought pressure on the state of Guatemala, the order that was enacted by the government was kept in abeyance. That's it. This is the fate that is happening. Now these are new instances. If you read, you will come to know. It is not given from the pocket. Now one instance happened to be another instance which is related to a drug company of the state of India. See, for AIDS, the state of the United States used to prepare a drug kit. And this drug kit would cost $15,000 per year. So if an AIDS patient were to use this kit, he has to pay $15,000. Now a company from developing country manufactured this for just $300. Where is 300? Where is $15,000? And when it prepared this, remember, the big companies who naturally circulated this said, no, it is not allowed. They should not be allowed to circulate. And there were protests, especially in Africa. When there were protests, certain countries, especially from the north, they came, they said, we will prepare a particular drug to relieve the patients suffering from AIDS. They charge $600. Now, when the situation going on, a particular company of the state of India prepared a particular drug. And this drug, remember, just cost $300. It is a generic form. And this generic form of drug was circulated into the market, and everyone was using it. Now you need not pay $15,000 per year, and the same thing is available for $300. Immediately the concern, this was done by CIPLA. CIPLA had done it, and it circulated it in Ghana. When it circulated in Ghana, remember Glasgow, another company, remember, objected to it. And ultimately it lost the petition. Now these are all, remember, things which we can speak hours together, and by taking one, see for example, take environment. Now global warming, sea level rise, Now transportation of hazardous waste, dumping of hazardous substances. Now what answer is there? Unless the international community comes collectively and tries to resolve issues, this cannot be solved. That is the answer that is being given. Now you might be knowing yesterday again in Bali, the state of United States made a statement saying that the undertaking which we have taken under the protocol, Kyoto Protocol, is not binding. Well, under the Kyoto Protocol, the state of United States is supposed to give assistance to all countries to eliminate the release of CFCs. Now they are saying, no, we are not bound by it. If you adopt such an attitude and such an attitude, whose rights will be respected? Is it yours or is it ours? I sincerely thank you for giving an opportunity to me, and thank you for your patience here.
Your exposition has been really impressive. The stark realities and some of the startling problems in view of the impact of globalization were referred by you, particularly the economic inequities, debt trap, underemployment and unemployment with reference to the overall scenario. Thank you once again. The forum is open for discussion, but only for 5 minutes and 2 questions, please.
Sit there that I thought I should discuss with you. That was a very, very wonderful presentation. The only problem is, after hearing to you, I retried my memory of Dakshina Kannada's communal violence. If you read the 8 to 10 years story in Dakshina Kannada, what has happened is, every communal riot has given a way for the other one of revenge that takes place. We have not heard in the history that the war has brought peace. It has always either, instead of peace, has brought tension. It has happened in Dakshina Kannada that every after communal riots, we have either fought once again the enemy or the so-called the target in the form of revenge or whatever. With this, I go back to your conclusion that communalism is more dangerous than the communal riots. Communal riots in India also has strengthened the kind of communalism that we are witnessing. Therefore, I request you to just clarify a small thing.
Friends, I think, I don't know whether you noticed a feature in my paper. In the entire paper, typed for 10 pages, I did not name anybody. It is a nameless paper in a deliberate sense, because naming anybody would mean taking sides in this game of communalism. So the question that he has raised, this is in one sense, this is a chicken and egg conundrum. Which comes first? Now I believe that South Canara, Dakshina Kannada, we have witnessed it in recent times. Now who began it? Why did it begin? What is going to be its denouement? We do not know, because it's a useless kind of an inquiry. This is essentially an inquiry which deteriorates into a blame game. But my point is this: communal riots are not spontaneous riots. They look like spontaneous riots. They always are attributed to some trivial incidents. But communal riots take place because there is a long societal preparation to it. And the so-called trivial incident becomes only the spark that kindles the powder keg. This is precisely what happens. So my argument is, No, my argument is not that of a lawyer, not that of a government agency, but that of a layman. In a way, that of a helpless layman. But I think I represent India more than the lawyers represent India. The government represents India. Because it is the layman who has to perhaps voice. Because communal rights, when they break out, they have to be dealt by the police, by the agencies. There is no way out. And